Tonight on The Conversation.
I wanted to stay home. My mother was a working woman. I wanted to stay home and be a mom, you know, and there I was thrown back, you know, immediately into the workforce.
Like with my daughter, what's the most important thing is that she emerges. Like, I'm so interested in who she is, not who I want her to be. I have no investment in an idea of who she should be. I just want her to be herself, and I want to support that fully without any judgment at all.
I think it probably gets harder, you know, to juggle when your baby can actually articulate the fact that she or he doesn't want you to leave.
All you need is one person, a solid force in your life to tell you that everything's gonna be okay, to let you know that no matter what happens, they're gonna have your back.
The Conversation is a totally alternative interview series with women who have a story or experience to share. We talk about everything that women talk about: relationships, sex, kids, career, money problems, body image. We're basically talking about the universal language of women.
Trying to do so much in this world is hard.
Yeah.
You know, usually you say, okay, I could be a mother, be a working woman. Put those two together, they ain't easy. And then take care of yourself. And all of a sudden we see the journey.
Right.
And my journey is birth and death. Every time somebody died, I was birthing something. So that my first experience was Anne Klein. So as a designer, I worked for Anne Klein.
And how old were you when she passed?
25. And Gabby was born as Anne died.
Wow.
The day of a show.
Wow.
So there I am, giving birth. I am a few weeks late, and I had a pre-fall collection to do, so it was pre-fall. And you know, when am I gonna have this baby? And I am huge.
And
I mean,
working.
Absolutely huge. Working, and finally, you know, it was time. And I was in the hospital, and I get a call. And they said, when are you coming back to work? I said, would you like to
I'm
know
in labor.
Would you like to know whether I had a boy or a girl, by the way?
Right.
Well, yeah, when are you coming back to work? We have a collection due.
Oh, the fashion business is ruthless.
We have a collection due. And I go, excuse me, by the way, I had a girl. And they said, well, I need a week. So he says, okay, well, we'll come out to you. I had just moved into this brand new house. And they brought the entire collection. As soon as everybody came, the phone rang, Anne died. Whew. I was in a state of shock. First of all, in those days, people did not discuss cancer. Anne had cancer, and I didn't even know it.
And you were one of the closest people to her.
Well, she was like my mother. And my whole life at that moment changed. Because I had said to Anne, I was not coming back to design. I was going to stay home and be a mom, you know, and that was going to be my life.
The universe has had entirely different plans for you,
I mean,
right?
whatever it was, the last thing I wanted to do, I wanted to stay home. My mother was a working woman. I wanted to stay home and be a mom, you know, and there I was thrown back, you know, immediately into the workforce.
And how was that, having a small, tiny baby?
I don't think I've ever gotten over it.
Really?
No.
Why?
I always felt that I was not the mom that I should have been. Now, if you'll talk to my daughter, she'll tell it to you differently, but I guess Jewish guilt is the only way that I would call it.
Do you just feel like you weren't...
Like I was never there, you know,
Right.
because, you know, I would always say, every time I had to leave, it was going away again, Ma, and she'd run after the car, or, you know, I'd be in Europe and talking to her on the phone, and I mean, since the day she was born, I was back at work.
That's really...
The collection had to be done. And there was nobody to do it but me. And that was at Anne Klein. And I had called Anne in. I said, Anne, we really need somebody to take over. And it was Louis Delolio. I had said to my friend, Louis Delolio, I said, Louis, you got to help me out. He says, I've got a collection to do. I said, you don't understand. You've got to come. I can't do this. And Louis came in, but Anne died, so it became Louis and I who worked on the collection together.
I went to an event that you had at Urban Zen, and it was an award in the name of your husband, honoring Bill Clinton. What is that like to sit to watch somebody change, to go through sickness?
I used to cry every night. You know, at first I thought it was a joke. At first, really, he thought it was a joke.
Well,
Stephen
you were
was
in
the guy.
denial about it.
Stephen was. I mean, we both were. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm going to race motorcycles.
Right.
But that's the kind of guy Stephen was. He was a real
Loved life.
man.
It's,
And he, everything he did, he worried about my business. He worried about the family. I wanted to run away when he got sick. I wanted to take a boat and just go. I just wanted to go on a boat with him. I just wanted to be with him. I just wanted to be with life. You know, and Stevens stayed here and made sure that I was protected. I mean, he was my partner in business. He took care of me. He watched over me. He gave me a budget. But I learned so much. You learn so much after the fact. It wasn't during it. You know, during it, I was in the present moment.
were you just
But
getting
had
through the
I
days?
known what I know now, and I think that's the way life is.
What do you know now that you wish you'd known?
Regret that the fights that we would have over the silliest things in the whole world. I mean, temper tantrum fights over nothing. You know, today I laugh about it.
Why is change so painful? Why are we not willing to
Why
change?
I mean letting go? Wait, there's a difference between change and letting go.
Right. Right.
Letting go
Is
for some people are painful.
Is it painful for you?
Yes, but when Stephen knew he was ready to go, he was so ready to go. It wasn't him that had the problem. I had the problem. I didn't want the loss. So you say letting go? It's impossible.
How did you learn to function without him?
I haven't.
What have been some of the areas for you that you have made peace with the areas that you feel imperfect?
Oh, how long is your show?
I absolutely think teens are having sex too young.
I was 20 when I was pregnant, and I just thought that was way too young.
Most don't even know what really getting involved with someone sexually really means.
Your body is something that you should just really admire about yourself first. Learn about your body first before you start sharing it with somebody else.
It's like girls are thinking, oh, I have to show this part of my body, or I have to be so overtly sexualized in public, and that is acceptable. And it might be acceptable for them or it might not, but I think the sad part of that for me is real sexuality, female sexuality, is an intensely private thing.
What is your relationship to sensuality and your sexuality?
Well, I think it's an absolute fundamental part of being a woman, and the expression, the self-expression that you're able to have sexually is only in that circumstance, I think. Like, you can only express that true, intimate, free side of yourself in private. It doesn't work in public. It's fake if it's in public. So I just worry that these girls, you know, they're denying themselves real sexuality by trying to conform to something.
It's a really valid and interesting point.
But nobody talks about it.
Right. So how do you think a young girl or a woman can know what real sexuality is?
Well, I think personally, and I'm not saying that this is the answer for everybody, but I personally think that only in a committed relationship where you trust the other person with everything and there's real intimacy there, that's where you find your sexuality. You know, you don't find it
On a one-night stand?
No, you don't. It has to be a longer term situation where you're completely safe, and that's where it starts to reveal itself.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would not have known that had I not have been in
Shagged
something.
everyone.
Yeah, good for you. And you too, by the way, so, you know.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. We got it out of our system. You know, but I also think there's something to be said for that. I think that it is a process.
Yeah.
And, you know, certainly for me, a sexual experience of a one-night stand was not sexually fulfilling.
Right.
You know, it
Of
wasn't.
course not. Not for a girl. There's
It's
no
just
way.
not. The female orgasm takes so much more than just stimulation. You know,
Yeah.
it's a whole emotional, psychological
Yeah.
component. You know, like I've certainly am prepared to have a conversation with my daughter about female sexuality.
Yeah.
And being comfortable having a voice to speak up and say, I'm comfortable with this, I'm not comfortable
Yeah.
with this I like, this I don't.
Well, that's what it is. Like, I look at my daughter and I just think she so says what she needs to say. And so I think she's already well set up for being able to express herself and what she's comfortable with and what she's not. But I'm definitely going to have a talk. I mean, no one ever spoke to me about anything.
Me neither. I totally found out just trial and error.
Yeah.
You know? And I guess, like, that's what you're saying, is like, from my perspective, parenting, the biggest gift is to teach our kids to speak up as well.
100%. And to not pretend that we want them to speak up. You know, not say, what do you think? Oh, no, you didn't mean that, or that's not polite to say, or no, it's like, what do you mean? What are you saying? I want to hear it, you know? Because I think we came from a generation of like, now, you didn't mean that. Or,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no, I did, but now I don't.
If you don't want me to, I won't.
Right. But for me, like with my daughter, what's the most important thing is that she emerges. Like, I'm so interested in who she is, not who I want her to be. I have no investment in an idea of who she should be. I just want her to be herself. And I want to support that fully without any judgment at all. And like, I don't think our parents' generation of parents parented.
They weren't aware of that.
I don't think they were aware of it. And I also just love, you know, the opportunity to raise kids who are totally colorblind, and, you know, that two dads is normal, and just to raise kids without prejudice, I think is so powerful. And I think because we weren't, you know, because it wasn't the time. But we knew that you know, it's like you can just filter all of that stuff out. I just think it's, you know, parenting is such an opportunity.
It really is. It's also like, it's one of the areas that I feel most challenged.
Yeah.
You know, like nothing challenges me more than
It's
like,
impossible.
oh my God. I mean, you know, like even last night, you know, I was so tired and I was like, guys, can you just stay in bed? Like, please don't come downstairs for the 10th time. Like, I don't know at the point where I'm gonna snap, you know, and be like, get into bed. You know, it's like nothing challenges me more.
Yeah.
Nothing challenges me more. And there are days where I just feel like I'm not so good at this.
Yeah.
You know?
I think every parent feels that way.
What have been some of the areas for you that you have made peace with the areas that you feel imperfect?
Oh, how long is your show? I mean, there's so many. In terms of parenting, you know, when I'm tired, when my chips are down, that's when I don't parent the way that I want to parent. Like, I can get, you know, impatient and just like at the end of my rope, I feel threadbare, and I hate that, and I hate feeling out of control, even if I'm just saying, that's enough, like I can't deal. You know, it's not the way I would aspire to be, you know, but then I think they also, you know, I do really believe that part of our job is to equip them for the world. And, you know, we can't make everything okay for them. We can't take away all their suffering. It's not good for them.
No,
you know?
it's not.
They need to be able to know that, like, people lose their tempers and people have bad days, and it doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean anything. It's just that we're all human, and you can't. But of course, I beat myself up endlessly when
I think you have a pretty good gauge. I very much trust your instinct and guidance as a mother. And then I was thinking about the things that I've learned from you. And one of the things is really about family, And I was thinking about how, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't have a relationship with my father, and learning to be a mother to a son and a daughter when there isn't really an example, and how I watched you with your kids. And I really learned so much from you. I'm sorry.
This is the worst interview of
I
all
know,
time.
I'm so sorry.
Otto's
Stop.
crying.
I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that, personally, I've been able to witness, how you juggle everything and how you show up for your son and your daughter. And I've often looked at you and thought, how do you know how to do this? And then I know you had this amazing relationship with your dad.
Yeah. It's funny because I do credit that relationship with the reason that, when somebody says to me, how did you think you had the guts to sing at the Country Music Awards or write a cookbook, or why do you think you can do all this stuff? It's because he told me that I could from the time I was, probably before I could speak. And also he, I think, unconsciously parented in the most conscious way. He didn't do it out of instinct, and just what his parents did. It was he really thought about what he was saying, how he was relating to us. He wanted our opinion, he wanted to hear our jokes. He really bolstered us as people from the time we were tiny. And I think, it's funny because in a way, it's given me a strong sense of self. It's given me confidence and self-acceptance. And then on the other hand, I'm just as f***ed up as everybody else.
Have you had people, businessmen, just openly flirt with you?
Yeah.
And what do you do? How do you deal with that professionally?
I've never had anyone be disrespectful. But actually, I have had a few people be disrespectful.
To the women who think it can't be done, they have to either stay at home or be, employed and not take care of the kids, it can be done.
It's not always easy if we have a lot of stuff going on. You don't always get to leave the office on time.
It's about scheduling, sticking to schedules, and being a cohesive unit when things change.
It's a logistical challenge, but I've learned very quickly that everything is a logistical challenge when you have an infant at home. I think one of the biggest challenges for me is just the feeling of always being pulled.
Yeah.
If I'm at work, I'm thinking about the baby. When I'm with the baby, I'm often thinking about work. So I'm trying to make a much more conscientious effort to be present in the moment and do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
But there's been a marked shift in the past 2 weeks. I feel much more present than I did before.
And is your husband a support?
I describe it as the fog, the brain
fog. Yeah, I sadly was in that for a really long time. Is your husband helpful?
He's amazing. He's really wonderful, but in a way
he
that
works
I think
as well, right?
He does, yeah. But in a way that I think most husbands are, where limited attention span, really enjoys interacting and playing with the baby, but less into sort of the rote elements of caring for the child. I don't think there's been a diaper change yet, so things of that nature are definitely not his forte.
Right.
But no, he's been wonderful. I think for everyone, it's especially, you know, as a first-time mom, I'm learning the language of an infant. That's a challenge, but in some ways I think that, you know, I think ahead to 2 years from now, and I think that it's almost going to be, I think it's probably gets harder, you know, to juggle when your baby can actually articulate the fact that she or he doesn't want you to leave.
Well,
You
how
know, so I
about-
think about her saying, like, I don't want you to go to work, Mom, and like that will be a lot harder than, you know, me sneaking out of the house like I did this morning after I'd fed her while she's napping.
Can you see a time where you don't want to work?
I can't.
Really?
To me, it's it motivates me. It keeps me engaged. You know, I recognize that there are challenges to doing it and raising a family, and ideally, I'd like to have a large-ish family. I'd like to have 3 or 4 children. So, you know, I hope to be able to engage my daughter and ultimately my children in my business. You know, not to compartmentalize my life, but really bring them into it. It's something my parents did very effectively. It's something my husband's parents did very effectively. You know, I would, from when I was a young girl, traipse behind my mother as she was walking the Plaza Hotel, which she was managing at the time, and hearing the conversation she was having with the line staff, you know, hearing the decisions she was making on a daily basis. With my father, I would hang out on the floor of his office and just play. So I think there's a way to incorporate
And you learned,
children into that.
you saw firsthand.
Yeah, less through sort of instructional teaching and more through observation.
Do you think if you weren't born into a family that had a business, that you would have ended up in business?
I do.
Interesting.
I think it's, I think if you're going to be successful, there's a certain instinct to the business world that you sort of have or you don't have. You know, I'm always most excited when I'm working on a deal that I'm passionate about.
I would imagine, and I know for myself, just being, you know, a woman who's professional and has a career, you learn a whole nother skill set that maybe a guy doesn't have to learn, you know? And it's that fine line between allowing your femininity to be present and to not overshadow.
It really, for me, becoming more comfortable was an organic evolution that started to occur as I became more confident in my abilities. You know, now I'm not afraid to wear a pink suit in the office.
Right.
You know, I'm not afraid of femininity. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. You know, hiding the woman that I am.
Have you had people, like businessmen, like just openly flirt with you at meetings?
Yeah.
And what do you do? How do you deal with that professionally?
I've never had anyone be disrespectful, but actually, I have had a few people be disrespectful. But I think you just, you know, you have to manage that.
Yeah.
You know, as a gender, we still have a lot of issues that we have to deal with. There are countless studies that talk about how women are more inclusive in the way that they talk and the way they present. They're less likely to take credit for their achievements. They're more likely...
Which is kind of not a good thing, actually, I
They're
think.
more likely to use words like we did a
and
project
our.
that really was owned by them.
Right.
You know, and I think...
Well, that's not a bad thing.
No, I think it's actually, it's a very nice thing as a human being.
Yeah.
It can be a bad thing in a work environment where it's dog eat dog. So, you know,
Right.
if you are not being recognized for the value you're bringing to an organization, you're not being recognized.
Right, so how do you address that then? Would you be someone who said our and we did this? Or...
Well, I have a little bit of a different role in that, you know, now I'm, you know, have a group of very smart people working for me and with me. So it's a little bit different. You know, I think that I try to be conscientious of recognizing what it is that they're individually doing. You know, I also see and try to notice, you know, who's taking credit for everything blanketedly. And oftentimes it's the boss who does that. You know, not the top boss, but the middle boss.
Right.
And that's, I think, that's one of the biggest challenges. How do you circumvent that if you
How
don't
do
have the
you?
direct line of access?
How do you?
I think it's contextual. I think you have to understand your organization. Sometimes you can't. And sometimes you just have to leave because you'll always be under that person.
Right.
And you know you're not going anywhere.
How many people do you personally, how many people are you personally in charge of?
Well, I think of our company as a team, and, I work collectively. My brothers and I work side by side. We all work for my father. So I don't really think about, we don't think about it in sort of an employee-employer context. But we have a great organization. We have many different businesses.
Do you like negotiating?
I do.
I get scared in negotiations. And I have this moment where I'm like, oh gosh.
A lot of people feel very uncomfortable doing it. I mean, there are many cultures where it's offensive not to negotiate.
That's right.
We're not one of those.
Right.
But
how do you learn negotiating?
I don't think you can teach somebody to be a good negotiator if they don't like doing it.
Right.
I think some people are better negotiators than others, and that is what it is. I do think, though, over time, you get better at it and you can hone it, and it really is, it's a great skill, and it's a skill that's applicable in many areas of life outside of business as well.
Oh, totally kidding.
Poker players.
How about marriage?
Marriage, exactly.
It just looks different on the outside, but it's still a negotiation.
That would be a great example,
yeah.
and I'm sure raising children.
Yes, exactly.
So, there are certain things that crystallize for you in terms of strategies that are effective. And sometimes, just simply recognizing that you're the right or wrong person to be participating in a negotiation.
When you negotiate with somebody or you're in a business meeting with someone and you walk in, how do people respond to you?
I joke with my brothers because, we're often in a situation where we'll be sitting with a room full of bankers, and I'm inevitably the only woman in the room.
In the pink suits.
But I joke with my brothers that, those bankers, if they want a point of contact, they tend to pick up the phone and call me first.
Great.
So, I'm the woman. It's more interesting.
How do you feel about your body?
Never good enough.
I'm comfortable in my body now.
It's an evolving feeling.
Is it important for you to fit in?
I guess it's important for everyone to fit in, but I try and be true to myself no matter where I am.
Well, I'm a Red Sox fan and I live in New York City.
Look at this hair. Of course I felt like a minority and I didn't fit in.
I'm used to being the only black person in the room. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me to the point where I feel insecure or I feel like I can't, because I feel like I can maneuver it from the projects to the penthouse. Like I can, that's been my life.
Your mom was a teenager when she had you. She was 15?
Yeah, 15, 16.
And she didn't raise you, but your grandma did,
yeah,
right?
my grandmother, Lorraine, raised me. When I was born, she quit her job that she'd worked for years and to stay at home and raise me. And in order to do that, she had to go on welfare. So that meant, food stamps and things like that, very, very limited budget. I grew up with this whole notion of waste not, want not, and saving everything and reusing everything to the point where it was so freaking annoying. It got annoying because and I also associated that with being poor, which I hated.
Right.
So it was really hard for me because, I ended up getting a scholarship to this boarding school, which was like super waspy rich school with kids who had a completely different.
Okay, wait a second.
I jumped ahead.
Come on. So you're talking about, this is how you grew up.
Yeah.
Your grandma raised you. Your mom was around, but not really in and out. Your grandma was your primary caretaker.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide, I want an education, or this is what I'm going to do, this is where I'm going to go?
That's from an early age. I mean, that was the thing that my grandmother was really tough on, was that education was the only way that I was going to be able to get out of the environment that I was in, or to become some. It wasn't necessarily a bad environment, but I lived in the South Bronx, and not too many kids get a chance. So she instilled that in me from a very young age, that the only way for me to succeed, I had to do well in school. After that, you can do whatever you want, but in order for me to get opportunities and for me to become someone, I could not be a dummy. So I get this scholarship to this boarding school in Connecticut, and here I am now going from South Bronx to posh Connecticut.
How was that?
Insane.
That's crazy, right?
And also, too, I felt really insecure about how I looked because I was really, really skinny. And I know that for some people, that's like, well, what are you bitching about? But
no, that can be a problem.
I was super, super skinny. And where I grew up, I did not feel attractive.
Because the women around you were curvier?
No, who wants somebody that looks like a piece of rail? You know what I mean? In my mind. And I had a friend who said to me, you look like a boy, and you look like this, and you lucky you pretty because like nobody want you, and like this is my best friend. So I already had a complex about being really skinny. And at the end of the day, whether my complex was being skinny, someone else maybe think they're fat, it's the same thing. Like you don't love who you are.
Exactly.
So when I got to boarding school, now tables turn because now I'm in like super waspy white world where being skinny is the shit. But I'm also in a place where I'm really poor. I'm really poor.
But you're skinny.
But I'm skinny. So
you have currency in one area, but not in the other.
And it was enough currency for my whole kind of like idea of myself to flip.
That is so wild.
Culture shock.
I mean,
on
really?
every front.
Were there any other mixed race or black girls there?
There were. It was about 9% minority, which includes everything.
It's kind of nuts.
I mean, I had my issues, but there are some kids who it was really harder for them. Because you have a foot in one world and a foot in the other.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, again, I had that one person in my life that gave me unconditional love and support. There were some kids who didn't have that.
Right, and that's something that you and I have talked about, that, you know, just because you don't have a mother or a father who are your primary caregivers, you were an example of somebody who had another person who was your maternal grandma, who acted as that role, who gave you unconditional love and support.
Right.
And as long
all
as
you need is one.
It's true. All we need is one person.
All we need, and it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Like, all you need is one person, a solid force in your life to tell you that everything's going to be okay, to let you know that no matter what happens, they're going to have your back, and that you can become or be anything you want, and that they love you. Like, it's only one person. It doesn't take two, an army. I mean, I know they say it takes a village, but really, it takes a person. Because I had this amazing woman in my life, it wasn't, you know, I didn't feel like I lacked that much. And she lived long enough to see me get into Yale and to actually come and visit me there. And then that January, she passed away.
But did she get sick?
You know, she had heart problems and she smoked. But, you know, when I was 11, I found her, when she had her first heart attack, I found her in the bathroom at 5:30 in the morning. So I'm glad she didn't die then.
That must have been terrifying.
You know, it's amazing what you can handle, because at that moment, I went right into like, but I didn't have time to freak out.
When she passed, how did that affect you?
It was tremendous. I mean, it just shook up my whole world, because I was at Yale. Now I'm all alone. It was like, well, what the hell am I gonna do now? And
What did you do?
Well, I just kind of wallowed. I mean, I had friends. I just didn't want to be there anymore.
So when did you
decide to leave?
Yeah.
It was my sophomore year, and I was just like, all right. Like, I knew that I wanted to go, but I can't leave without a backup plan. Like, I can't drop out of Yale and just figure it out.
That must have been a crazy risk.
I mean, that's why I think sometimes when you're young, because you don't have the experiences yet, you make decisions that are like super brave and risky because you don't know any better. I didn't know.
This is big stuff to live through.
Yeah. I mean, I think
you know that, right?
No, I do. And there are things that, like, just the way that I was raised, I've had to put things aside to charge forward, or use certain things that some people might think is like, oh my God, I can't believe. But I had to look at them in a different way and find the the light source with it to help me.
The gift of it.
Because, I mean, I was just raised not to let them see you sweat. But, you know, what I'm also learning too is that because I was taught to put on that armor and charge through things and don't let them see you sweat. That's not necessarily something that serves me anymore because I made it. I mean, I know that I have, they're not meaning like, oh, I'm so great.
No, but you're out of, you've grown past the point where you were. Time has evolved.
I made it.
You're
like,
not a little kid.
I'm not a little kid anymore, and I can't be in survival mode anymore.
It's
I survived.
exhausting.
It's exhausting. While there's still many things that I want to do with you know, creativity or my work or this or that or goals that I might set for myself, I made it.
What is your favorite sex position?
I can't answer that.
Octopus.
How do I narrow it down to one? I don't just have one.
What do you lie about?
What do I lie about? What do I lie about?
To who? What do I lie about?
Wow.
I mostly lie to cover other people's mistakes.
I don't lie.
I used to, because I am such a pleaser.
I lie about stupid stuff.
You know, I try not to lie, obviously.
But I don't say what I want to say.
Maybe mislead a little bit.
Being in a relationship.
I age.
And I lie to myself, which is the worst.
How do you feel about your body?
Never good enough.
I love my body.
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
Oh, I wish I was a bit slimmer.
I'd like to be more curvy, definitely. Like, I'm like straight up and down.
I'm comfortable in my body now.
You know, I get stuck in front of a mirror every single day like we all do.
I don't have mirrors in my house, by the way, for that reason.
I love my body.
When I feel like I look good, it makes me happy.
You're telling me that you never look at yourself?
To me, do I have one mirror in my bath? I have one mirror, right? One.
Just for the face. You won't go down to the body.
No. That's how I feel about my body.
I love my body.
I like my boobs.
I think God gave me a perfect body.
And I especially like them as I gotten older.
They got fuller.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's an evolving feeling.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, God, I have so many.
I have more than one.
Rosé in the springtime. Depends on the season.
Going into the ice cream box late at night.
Lately, it's been mozzarella sticks.
Dark chocolate.
Previously, when I had more time, it was massages.
Tell me one of the best pieces of advice that was ever given to you.
Don't try so hard.
Treat others how you want to be treated.
You can't make new old friends.
Don't give up.
Love what you do.
Humility does not equal humiliation.
What is your favorite sex position?
I can't answer that.
I forget.
Well, that depends on the situation I'm in.
My vibrators.
You serious?
Really?
You don't have to answer that.
I definitely can't answer that. My husband would kill me.
Okay. Okay, got it.
It's been so long, I forgot.
So I can vibrate and have sex at the same time.
How do I narrow it down to one? I don't just have one.
I like to switch it up.
Octopus?
No. What's your favorite sexual position?
Oh my God, I have children and a mother is gonna see this show.
What would you tell your 14-year-old self?
I would tell my 14-year-old self, oh, that makes me want to cry, that you are important and that life is going to be good.
Not to take myself so seriously. I think there's, and this is something I'm still working on, it's, you know, it's easy for somebody with a type A personality to be sort of wound too tight, but, you know, just to laugh at yourself as often as you can, I think is good advice, particularly when you're a self-conscious 14-year-old.
That I'm not alone. There are other people that think like me, feel like me, and things like that. And to just be my own individual and be happy with that. And don't do it at the detriment of other people.
Get involved. Travel. Look at those less fortunate. I think you have to pay service. I think it's the only way you learn.
Don't be afraid of who you are. Be who you are. Because who you are is wonderful. It's beautiful. I wish I had felt that more when I was 14. Yeah.
Looking at my daughter's face every morning gives me hope. I mean, the incredible innocence that you see in children's eyes gives me hope. You know, that's the next generation. That is the generation with the ability to really change everything.
The only thing I want women to remember, if I have anything to say, the name is woman. Let's not castrate men. In this whole woman's movement, I can say that I want my child, my woman child, to go to a different type of education than my male child. And my biggest fear at this moment is that we're not equalizing men and women.
The reason why women are competitive is there's an evolutionary purpose to it, but I think it's like with anything, you know, we have to overcome those more base animalistic instincts. It's like we're in the age of enlightenment, you know, we have to make strides and we have to change that.
Just because you're a poor black child from the Bronx doesn't mean you can't achieve anything. I mean, look, you know my story. I can't accept crumbs, even if that's what you expect me to accept. I wasn't raised that way. So for me, while I understand the reality of what the world is, I'm not tripping on it. I got into Yale. I'm alive. I come from an environment, I'm not even supposed to be here right now, so it doesn't scare me. I just try to do what I can do to chip away at it and also find a way around it and find a way to, like, you know, still be in the mix. I'm not letting that deter me from what I need to do, even though the odds have been stacked against me my entire life. That's all I know.
Thank you for being a part of this.
Oh, what are you kidding? If I wasn't, I'd kick you in your ass.
As you and...
As me, oh, my cat.
Oh, that's a cat?
He's the loudest.
Wait. He sounds like a child.
I still do have the pregnancy brain, though. As I was saying at the beginning, I was like, no, I think I'm doing a little better. Then I'm trying to articulate myself here. I'm like, huh.
Why do you make me cry every time? Oh, I can't look at you. Okay, ask me a sex question.